Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. I think no one likes it when their private property is violated, just like our OP in the first story who had to deal with such neighbors. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Neighbors want us to be inconvenienced so they can park their car in front of our house. Context: my house is on a busy main road with a lot of traffic throughout the day. There's a local bus stop literally opposite our gate, and buses run every 10 to 15 minutes. All in all, traffic is always very high. The way that our plot is built, there's a strip running along our wall adjoining the road that technically comes within our property line. Due to construction regulations or something, there's nothing on that patch. It runs along the length of our compound wall and the road. Just beside our house is a small lane, the width of one small car and a bike. There are about 5 to 6 houses in that lane, with only one of them owning a car. It's my aunt, and she rarely takes her car out. It's parked inside her house compound 90% of the time. There's an electric pole right off the entrance of the street. It's a huge headache for anyone to come into our drive into the street because of that. On occasions that my aunt needs to use her car for a few days in a row, she prefers to park just outside my house. No problem, we have an arrangement, and anytime there's an inconvenience due to traffic, my uncle, aunt's husband, me, or someone else can move the car. Trouble started about a couple of months ago. One of our neighbors has a house at the very end of the street. Their compound doesn't have enough space for a car. A relative of theirs has been staying with them. They own a small hatchback, which they started parking outside our house. At nights, it's not an issue, but my father and uncle often need to travel for work and often need to leave early in the morning. We have 2 cars, one a large SUV and the other is a bit smaller, but still sizable. Due to the heavy main road traffic, it's nearly damn impossible to maneuver the car out if there's a vehicle parked outside our house. You can see where this is going. My father, uncle, and me have asked them multiple times not to park there or to move their car in the mornings so that we may go about our business. They listened for a couple of days, and voila, a few days later the car's again parked outside our house. We ended up having a huge argument with them, and now they've started to park their car in the small street and have begun to hamper the people living in the street, as the vehicle completely jams the street. Anyone coming in or out of the street has a lot of trouble. A couple days ago, they scratched the side of their car against the electric pole while backing it out of the street. They again parked it outside. This morning, my father had to wait for half an hour to get his car out. Not a very patient man in the best of situations. He blasted off at our neighbor. They in turn blame us for the scratch and are demanding that we pay for the damages as we don't allow them to park outside and hence indirectly cause the damage to the car. My father was left speechless at their audacity and pretty much told them to F off. Those guys are a real nuisance for sure. And our second story. You think I should quit my job? Sure thing, man. This happened earlier this year around the beginning of February. A friend who I hadn't talked to in a little while asked me if I was interested in applying for a food service job where they had also been working at the time. Boy, was I in for it. I agreed because I needed a little extra cash and it wouldn't hurt to have some job experience before I started college. This would be my first job ever. According to my friend, their establishment had been understaffed lately and really needed the extra help. Not having worked before, I didn't realize that there was probably a reason they were so understaffed. I contacted the manager and he told me to come in for an interview. I was psyched, but a tad nervous because I have social anxiety, which has only worsened since the pandemic started. Here comes red flag number 1. The day of the interview, I was asked to adhere to a specific dress code, which I would later realize was the establishment's employee dress code. I then met the manager, and he brought me to the back room to ask me a few questions. I brought him a physical copy of my resume, which he said he didn't need to look at. After a few very basic questions, my name, what school I go to, he told me I was going straight to work. So is this the start of training then? Did I get the job? Oh no, we don't actually have official training, so I'm just going to throw you in the kitchen to see how you do. You'll work for a few weeks and then we'll determine if you're a good fit for blank establishment and vice versa. Suddenly, this manager, who was supposedly welcoming and excited to have me join their family, began to show his true colors. Not only did he display blatant favoritism toward his more experienced employees, he berated me on multiple occasions, in front of my other coworkers, for not being able to learn how to make our products correctly and quickly enough to his satisfaction and get them out to the customers. I was new, not stupid. Not to mention you literally did not train me. It got to the point where I dreaded going to work. One day, specifically, my coworker had asked me to refill the canister of lemonade as he was about to make an order for a customer. There were no other customers waiting for their product, so I helped him finish his task. This was a mistake, as my manager walked in right as I had finished pouring the lemonade. "Gator, the customer always comes first. Why are you filling up the lemonade when you should be making orders? You aren't taking this job seriously. X employee and Y employee are doing this right. Why is this so hard for you?" He left the kitchen, and my coworker, who had asked me to fill the lemonade, came up to me and apologized, telling me to ignore him. It was becoming obvious that my other coworkers were scared of screwing up in front of him too. This happened on various other occasions that I'll spare you the details of, but here comes the malicious compliance. It was my second to last shift of the week, falling on Saturday, which was often our busiest day. My other friend had been hired and we had our first shift together. I was pumped. The manager was in that day as construction workers were setting up cameras in the front of the store and in the kitchen, so he'd be able to keep an eye on not only his customers, but his beloved employees. I don't exactly remember the specifics of what led up to this, but in the middle of my shift, he came up to me, with my coworkers watching, and proceeded to yell at me, saying I was too timid with the customers and how this would cost him good reviews. He said that anytime he put me on a shift, he was worried that he'd have to babysit me while I made the orders or did my tasks, and if I couldn't handle the job, it's best that I quit. I was pissed. None of it made sense. I always greeted customers when they walked in, took their orders, and told them to have a nice day after handing them the product. Did this guy expect me to strike up a conversation with each customer like we were old friends during a rush? I wasn't even allowed to work the register yet. Also, aren't I supposed to be in the back making the order, which you so desperately need me to make? Anyway, none of my coworkers have filed complaints about my work being sloppy or me not being able to handle my tasks. I was doing everything right. So I did exactly like he asked me to. When I got home, I do have quite a problem with defying authority face-to-face because of my social anxiety. I messaged my manager privately that I would be showing up to my shift tomorrow because I didn't like the idea of abandoning my coworkers on such short notice, but not to put me on the schedule anymore because I'd be quitting. He thanked me for being honest with myself. I came in for my last shift and told my coworkers what happened. They offered their condolences, and I actually had fun for the last few hours I spent at that dreaded job. My manager closed that night, and I told them I was leaving because of school, complete BS, but my coworkers and I knew the real reason. I have not set foot in that place since, and may be so inclined in the future just to gloat a little. Here are some fun little updates on the current state of their establishment. Before I quit, 3 other people also had quit the previous week for various reasons, and after I quit, the numbers escalated. They now have a total of 3 employees, not including the manager and his family members, whom he forces to work to make up for losses. I ran into one of my old coworkers at school, and he told me he was also quitting to work somewhere else. He'd just been hired. It was great to see him again. I live in a smallish town, so word gets around quickly about certain crappy managers at certain crappy establishments. It's no surprise that people know to avoid working there. And here are some other red flags that I probably should have paid more attention to before jumping into the job. Employees were not required to get food handlers' licenses until 2 weeks after I'd started working there. I'm pretty sure that's actually illegal. I got one beforehand, of course. The friend who'd encouraged me to take the job quit a few days after I was hired. We were constantly out of some ingredients, and my coworkers and even my manager would lie to customers about what was in their order. Our products were way overpriced for something anyone could easily make at home. And our last story. Entitled neighbor doesn't like our fence. This happened today. I'm helping my folks get a fence installed around the perimeter of the house. The installers came today and began outlining the area with some neon lanyard on rebar posts. A few moments later, the neighbor comes out. She points to me and gestures me to come over to talk while shooing away my father. There have been arguments before. She begins to tell me that we are encroaching on her property line. I tell her that we are not and are going based off of where our driveway ends, and we also have a permit from our local village. She continued her talking and went about how the snow and rain from our driveway slopes and floods their basement. Our driveway is not sloped, and the fact she has flooding has more to do with structural integrity in her basement. Sometimes you can't reason with people, but I continue to explain that we're in the right, approved for the work, and surprisingly found out from an old property survey that the supposed area we are encroaching on actually belongs to us. I showed her the survey, and it flew right over her. Later, she contacted the village's Building and Public Works Department. The gentleman that came said that we were approved and we continued. He mentioned that he was only there to serve as a civil court. The neighbor called the Public Works Department again an hour later, and 2 individuals came this time. She didn't listen to us or the first inspector, but she seemed to be reasonable with the second. Out of spite, she said she would install a fence into our driveway's concrete, and I said, sure, if you get the permit and if the contractor has sound judgment. Fences. Installing them causes as many issues as not having them. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.